know that communities, people who are low income, unbanked, they feel more comfortable walking into a post than walking into a bank branch. And there's a lot of human interaction and knowledge and comfort that happens between a post office and their customers. It's just that the post office today is not as digitized as your mobile money agent or the next fintech that's trying to take place in the ecosystem. So this is where I see a real convergence of posts as a national infrastructure. And the reason we call it Phygital is because we're linking the physical presence of a post with the digital transformation that can be brought about, and where posts then can be DPI, but with a human touch. And we've broken it down into 3 parts, which are the 3 main parts of any digital public infrastructure program. ID, we do need to understand who the customer is, what exactly is their KYC process, all of that. So when you digital ID, a lot of posts are being used to also onboard communities onto the digital ID. And of course, you want to verify who exactly is coming to do a transaction, right? Which posts don't do today. It's very manual, but that's the whole sense of getting into DPI mode. Digital payments, posts with their counters can actually provide payment services to any kind of goods or services. And they also do logistics, they do deliveries. So, it makes very good sense to pay for stuff that you want to procure, and you can pick it up at a post office. If they're interoperable, even better. And that's what we are talking across these 3 days. And of course, data exchange and access. Posts can also be great vectors of actually collecting information, digitizing it, and then in turn informing government agendas, because they are actually at the last mile. And we have some examples. So India Post was involved in enrolling people for Aadhaar at that time. Post was also mandated by government at Ethiopia last year to start onboarding people, and payment for the digital ID was to be done digitally, and that was a good learning process for the population. Digital payments, I have some slides of lots of examples of how posts are involved in digital payments. And then there's some very good examples like ZimPost with the Zimbabwe Mall helps MSMEs transition into formal economy by helping them on board onto a marketplace, because they started a marketplace. There's ePosta Uganda. We heard from Uganda Central Bank earlier on session. They're offering a ton of e-government services via the post offices. So this literally makes them, a place where government services can be offered to the population. So let's go into business models and why the post can be an exciting partner, right? So we talked about affinity, we talked about trust, we talked about access. Most countries, they have a very good presence. If they don't have big numbers, someone said, oh, but the telecom operators with their mobile money agents, no one can compete with that. But we're not talking about competing on access for cash in, cash out. That's not the play. We're talking about one-stop shops for government-mandated goods, services, access, and then a structure that is present where most structures are not, right? We're talking about bridging gaps between digital and physical, and also how to enable payments. And we're talking about last mile, so this makes it quite interesting. Partnerships. Across the 3 days, we talked about partnerships. And posts know that they can't do this transformation without technology, without partnership with fintechs. And we've done at Amarante a lot of studies. They're published on the UPU website about how posts and fintech can partner for any segment, for any focus. It could be for government services, could be for women empowerment, it could be for MSME payment digitization. All it takes is to think about how we can make this partnership work and why should we do it, right? And of course, there are some things to work on, capacity building of course, have to think about the leadership of the post, the government mandate, how do we get these entities to talk to each other. Oftentimes the fintech payments, under the central bank will not talk to the Ministry of Posts and Telecom. Within the Ministry and Post of Telecom itself, they don't talk telecom and post together these days. So there's a lot of silos that we need to bring together around the table. But with our focus as Mojo Loop community on interoperability and payments, and our focus on last mile access, this could be a very sustainable way to bring it together for the last mile. Right? So what exactly are we talking about? When we think about business models for us as fintechs, we can break it down, and even when we look at the post, we can break it down to 4. So one and very classic way is that the post office and the postal branches become, the agent. So they have, like any agent network, they offer the services across the counter. You can think of post as digital payment acceptors, as a merchant. Whatever the post is offering, you can buy it there, you can pay digitally. You can think of posts as facilitators for MSME payments and delivery services. We just talked about logistics, e-commerce, and you could actually say, okay, the post can help an MSME access market because it could either sell or buy online. The post can take care of the logistics, but then the post can also enable the payment, right? So that's quite interesting. They have already intrinsically the logistic part. We have to see how we get the payment digitization part on. And the last model, of course, lots of posts are thinking about how they can become banks or how they can do more in the financial inclusion space, because for them, it seems like the lucrative way to go to offer loans. And what we tell them at Amarante is think about partnerships with PSPs, with fintechs, more than becoming banks, because you could actually be more flexible and arrive at more scale than needing to go through the capital requirements and the heaviness of actually converting into a commercial bank. That said, some posts, like in Burkina Faso, we see that the post is a bank also, and they have 2 structures. There's banking branches and post branches. In Morocco, for example, everything is housed under the same branch. So, posts are also trying to innovate and see where they can take part in this financial inclusion and digital trend that's happening in the market. So I want to bring this discussion now for us as a community to think through, if I were to go approach a post, what are my options, right? So we broke it down into 3 models. The first one is just plain and simple service provision. I go to a post, I say I'm a fintech, or I do payments, and I would like to partner with you to offer these services. So both people discuss a commercial agreement, see what's possible, etc. Right? Model 2 would be co-development. We go to a post and say, look, these are your challenges. We understand. We as this community, we want to offer interoperable payments. We want to take part in this last mile access. What can we do to develop together something that helps you and something that will help us? Right, so we could think of co-branded products, for example. We can offer adapted products to a certain segment or need that the post can bring to the table. And then, of course, the model 3 is a Phygital infrastructure. So how do you work with the post infrastructure and embed your own product offering through that infrastructure? And in this case, what becomes very important is the literacy part of it as well. How can the post help bring sensitization, education, and all of those programs that are so much needed from a human interface perspective, and merging that with a digital offering? So they could, these are not mutually exclusive, right? You could start anywhere, you could start from one, go to the other. But the key is to think about the post as a potential partner, and also being a public sector entity, it fits very well into the last session's conversation about public and private partnerships, right? And how do we make that work, and how does it sit within a nation's financial inclusion agenda, within a nation's digital agenda? Today we talk a lot about cross-border trade. The posts are already doing cross-border trade. They're connected to each other. It's just that it's not very digital. It's not that efficient. Many of them are putting, track and traces and all the, that technology in. But if we would couple it with this cross-border payment as well, think about the opportunities we could unlock, and especially for MSME access and trade. You have a question, Jamelino? Should I stop?
So what I was about to say is that we are observing across the continent this dynamic in the postal industry, where different post offices are preparing their, I would say, strategic transformation. But what we have also, I just want you to share your experience or your perspective on the regulation side, because we noticed that many post offices in the choices were very limited because of the regulation. So let me give the example of West Africa, for instance, where different post offices were not recognized as institutions that can, for instance, do everything related to digital banking, mobile money, or etc. So can you share your experience on that and how this can also influence the choice, the strategic choice you are referring to?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for the question, Jamlin. It's a very pertinent question, and that's why we talk about the choices for posts, whether they should become banks or whether they should do other things. Because from a postal appetite as well, they're very, very constrained by regulations. While a lot of them can mobilize deposits and they can open accounts, what they can't do, for example, is issue, e-money, for example, or loans, etc. They're quite constrained. But that would be, in our experience, like any non-banking institution that doesn't fall under central bank mandate, but is free to do a partnership with somebody who has a license, right? So that could be a PSP that has a license, and that's where the fintech partnership comes in. But we've known posts also to partner with banks, and then it works very much like how the mobile money does, where the bank is the custodian of reporting and regulation compliance with the central bank, and the post has an agreement with the bank for whatever is outsourced or whatever the post does in that configuration. So regulation becomes a constraint if we want to do something that's outside what the post can do as a partner to somebody who is regulated, right? But we can share a lot of studies on this topic that we have done with UPU, and we have discussed with the posts on how can we build these partnerships, because the fintech or the payment structure or even a bank would need to understand, why should I partner with the post? Where can the post help me? And it's usually in the last mile access, and it's usually in scale. And it's usually because they are government mandated to provide government mandated programs to the populations. And those are usually large volumes. So this is where the synergies lies, and I wouldn't call them regulatory constraints. I would more call them, how do you work under partnerships to make it happen for whatever the mandate is. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Maybe I will give the floor to Mr. Assi, who's been patiently listening to us. Mr. Assi is heading financial services at Togo Post, and we're very keen to hear from his experience as well. I've been discussing with him since yesterday. À vous, monsieur, I'll translate as we go.
Et merci beaucoup. Permettez que je puisse aller en français. Je ne suis pas trop clair en anglais. Je vous remercie. Je pense qu'on se retrouve pleinement dans tout ce que vous avez dit. Le fait que les pousses puissent se transformer dans la digitalisation dépend en fait de la volonté même des autorités. Puisque le potentiel est là, mais si vous ne mettez pas les moyens pour y parvenir, je pense que vous resterez plus statique. Au niveau de la bourse du Togo, comme au niveau de toutes les bourses, on peut vous l'enseigner. Les bourses souvent sont des parents pauvres d'une scission entre les télécoms et les bourses. C'était dans le temps où les télécoms étaient concurrence. Et avant, vous allez traduire, mais après, vous allez traduire. continue.
Je peux, I'll translate bit by bit. So he's thanking us for the opportunity to talk, and he says that he's completely aligned that there is a lot of potential with the posts, and a lot of posts are digitizing themselves. And he starts to tell us about some of the history where there's been a big divide between telecoms and posts, although they form part of the same ministry many times.
Alors, dans le temps, quand il y a eu la scission, le gouvernement subventionnait beaucoup les télécoms parce qu'il y avait évidemment du potentiel. Et il y avait le courrier qui montait en puissance, les SMS, pendant qu'au niveau de la poste, les mails, les courriers diminuaient, donc les postes souffraient pendant ce temps. Et donc, ça a été difficile. Et donc, disons que les autorités au niveau de la poste chez nous ont réfléchi. C'est vrai que nos aînés qui étaient là, qui sont actuellement déjà à la retraite, en ont souffert parce qu'au lieu de fermer, il fallait qu'on réduise ainsi les avantages. Mais il fallait aussi assainir le cadre parce que dans le temps, beaucoup, c'est-à-dire le public même, ne se fiait pas trop au courrier parce qu'il y avait beaucoup de spoliation, il y avait des pertes de courrier, il fallait améliorer le secteur. Et ensuite, il fallait tisser des partenariats avec les grands facturiers parce que les postes ont la particularité d'être répartis sur l'étendue du territoire. Donc, il fallait être des représentants de ces facturiers et moyennant quelques commissions. Donc, on survivait au début des commissions liées à ce partenariat. Ensuite, puisqu'il fallait rendre un service potable dans le cadre de ce partenariat, il fallait déjà améliorer le réseau de sorte à ce qu'on puisse rendre un service en temps réel. Cela nous a amené à améliorer d'abord nos équipements informatiques. Ensuite, il fallait négocier avec le gouvernement pour pouvoir gérer un peu les fonctionnaires qui, lorsqu'ils sont recrutés, étaient répartis un peu sur l'étendue du territoire, juste à cause de la proximité des postes. On devait servir disons, d'institutions financières qui devaient payer les fonctionnaires.
Je vais juste me permettre, le partenariat dont vous parlez, c'est avec qui, pardon?
Bon, disons la CET pour payer les factures, disons la régie des eaux pour payer les factures, tout ce qui est facture, tout.
D'accord.
Voilà.
Je vais juste traduire. Mr. Assis started talking about the time when, the telecom and the posts were separated from each other, and at that time, his previous generation who are now retired had a lot of work to do to see how to keep the post active. There were a lot of problems even with the systems that managed the couriers and the parcels, and there was a lot to do to make sure that the service was efficient. And then slowly came the partnerships for bill payment, and they had to set up different partnerships to pay bills, and then have to also upgrade their systems to do that. And after that was also a time where he talks about paying government employees, and those sometimes were based quite far away in different territories, different areas of the nation. So that was another challenge that they had to work with. Vous parlez des paiements de salaire des fonctionnaires, n'est-ce pas?
Oui, des fonctionnaires de l'État. Et donc, comme les fonctionnaires ont besoin des prêts, on n'avait pas dans le temps l'autorisation de faire des prêts. On faisait des prêts au portail, c'est-à-dire que nous recordons les prêts demandés par les fonctionnaires et nous allions au niveau des banques pour prendre ces prêts et on se partageait les commissions avec les banques.
So he says at that time they didn't have the authority to do loans, and so when the government employees wanted loans or maybe like a salary advance, they were going between the banks who were allowed to do the loan and then making sure that the loan was able to get or the employee of the state was able to get access to that loan. Mais vous le faites comment en fait? Par des systèmes? Par des systèmes, vous avez des intégrations avec les banques?
Je parle dans le temps, c'est-à-dire comment je vais un peu évoluer de comment ça se passe.
Okay, so at this time we're not talking about digital payments or flows. We're talking about historically how the post was helping make this go between the banking sector and the state employees.
Bon, je peux expliquer sur la table, nous avons beaucoup de soutien de la Banque centrale et Et ces dernières années aussi de l'État, puisque la Banque centrale nous a autorisé finalement à faire des prêts aux fonctionnaires. Et ces prêts, le risque était pris par de l'assurance. Et ensuite, disons que tout dernièrement aussi, nous avons un soutien effectif de notre ministre Phygital qui s'est intéressé à la digitalisation et qui a soutenu la poste. C'est dans ce plan qu'elle a négocié un partenariat avec les opérateurs télécoms. Vous savez, les opérateurs télécoms ont la particularité avec les kiosques d'être partout. Mais quel que soit le montant déposé sur le porte-monnaie électronique, il n'y a pas d'intérêt ici associé. Donc, ils ont trouvé un moyen de créer un produit SSD qui permet à un client, quel que soit le type de téléphone, qu'il soit basique ou de dernière génération, de pouvoir créer un compte épargne qui est domicilié à la bourse et qui est rémunéré au premier franc. Donc, cela a permis une adhésion de la population. Et c'est à partir de ce compte d'épargne aujourd'hui que et le gouvernement et les organisations internationales passent pour pouvoir appliquer l'assistance à la population.
Okay. Je vais essayer de traduire tout ça. I'll try to translate all of this. But what he was saying, and this goes to your point about regulation, Jamilino. So Mr. Assi is saying that they have a lot of support from the central bank. And because of the central bank, they are able to, they then, after the stage where they were the between banks and employees of the state, they got a lot of support from the central bank, and they were actually able to provide loans on their own that were insured by insurance companies, actually. And then from their ministry, they got even more support and encouragement to have partnerships with the telecom operators to work with mobile money. And what they have now done is, because mobile money wallets are usually not remunerated by regulation, they are not savings accounts, they can't be regulated. But what Togo Post has done is created a savings account linked to the mobile money account, so that a customer is able to push money into the savings account, and that is remunerated. So this helped get a lot of adoption from the population, and now it also forms the basis of creating other use cases using this account for social programs and for benefit of the population.
Et donc, dès lors, la Bourse a profité des opportunités liées à la digitalisation pour mettre sur pied de nouvelles applications qui permettent à la population aujourd'hui de se connecter à leur compte de faire des transferts, des comptes de wallet, des comptes de pays, des factures. Et je dirais même dans tout temps, quand le régime mémoire se mettait en place, la BCAO aussi nous a ouvert pour qu'on puisse être membre du gouvernement. Donc, nous de la page nous émettons des cartes bancaires pour nos clients. Nous avons des guichets automatiques répartis sur tout le long, disons, du territoire. Et nous devions aussi faire des cartes Visa dans le temps, mais nous avons été confrontés au fait que les émetteurs internationaux nous exigeaient une licence bancaire. Donc nous étions allés dans le sens d'obtention de cette licence où on nous avait séparé les activités financières, les activités, disons, du courrier. Alors que l'activité du poste, en réalité, la base, c'est le courrier. Donc il m'était difficile aujourd'hui pour la Poste de se lancer dans cette activité, puisque même parallèlement aux activités financières, nous avons digitalisé le courrier. Aujourd'hui, le courrier est celui de bout en bout. Nous faisons un transport mixte du courrier et des passagers simultanés, c'est-à-dire des départs simultanés du nord vers le sud, du sud vers le nord, où nous desservons même les plus reculés.
Okay, merci. So what he's saying is that from this, savings account that's linked to a mobile money account, populations now do a lot of transfers, bank to wallet, wallet to bank, payment of bills, etc. So it works very well. And he says that they were also from they're part of the WAMU region, so the BCIO, and the GYM UMOA network, and they're actually members of the GYM, and so they're able to also offer cards to their clients. They also have a network of ATMs, and so they're also able to take part in the card industry. However, they were not able to access the Visa and MasterCard networks because they're not certified as such, and they're not able to also separate their mail business, which is their core business, from the rest of the business. And they've also done a lot of investment in digitizing their mail and courier service so that they can track a mail from A to Z, from when it's sent to when it's received. Merci beaucoup. On va revenir vers vous dans la discussion. Thank you very much. But it's very interesting, and I think Togo Post shows us a much more mature use case than many posts, but it also shows us what is possible if we have the right regulatory approvals or blessing and the right mix and synergies between different ministries to make a post also take active part in the financial inclusion of a country. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the difference between posts and post banks. And in a lot of countries, the names can get very confusing, so it's often difficult to say whether it's a postal organization falling under a Ministry of Posts, or if it's a commercial bank that just has the name. Kenya is a case, Tanzania, I mean, we've put some examples here. And it's very important to understand the difference, because obviously if you're dealing with a commercial bank, your approach, the challenges, constraints are very different. Even the governance is very different from if you're trying to partner with a postal organization. India, you have India Post, India Post Payments Bank. In Uganda, you see it's very different, Post Bank, Posta. The same in Tanzania, you have Tanzania Commercial Bank, but also Posta. And you have various different logo differences like this. And sometimes the logos are the same, it's just the name that's different. So as you look through creating these kind of partnerships, and we're also at Amarante advocating for central banks to take a look at synergies between posts who have the name Post Bank and our commercial banks and the nation's designated postal operator. Because even banks and postal networks can have a lot of synergies to create between themselves. Many of these countries, they used to be the same organization 20, 30 years ago, and then there was a very explicit decision of separating the two, because financial services and banking is not the same as posts and postal operations. And today they come a full circle, wanting to work again with the financial and the banking side of things. And then, of course, it requires regulatory approval, and it requires a lot of synergy building. So we, as a technical assistance firm, we struggle sometimes to get those two entities to sit at the table and talk through these synergies. And we're hoping that with this community, some of that dialogue can happen, and in the spirit of public and private sector partnerships, that banks, fintechs, and postal organizations can also find a way to make more meaningful partnerships for this impact and for this last mile access, and also for interoperability at a one-stop shop location. So some examples of where there has been successful or innovative fintech and post operator. Thank you, Simon. See you next time. Partnership between post and fintech operators. So this is Kenya Post. They recently launched Posta Pay. For those of you who know, it's a homegrown white label solution that they procured from a software vendor, and they're offering it as a postal offering, and that too in Kenya, which is quite nice because I have 5 minutes, so I'll hurry up. Egypt Post is launching Wassel Wallet, and that's in partnership with Visa. Ethiopost took a very different strategy. Amrante Consulting worked with them for about 2 years to build a strategy where they could take center stage by offering their agent or their postal branches to any FSP in the country, so that this could be a truly inclusive agent network offering. And so they partnered with banks, they partnered with mobile money operator, there are 2 in the country, and also by being one of the onboarding entities for digital ID, it came as a nice one-stop shop for testing digital payments at a postal counter and also accessing government services. Botswana Post is a very interesting one. We learned last year in December that they are part of a project to have a national payment switch, and they will be one of the stakeholders in that project. So that also is very interesting for a community like this one to think through how would that work and what are the implications and opportunities from that model. We talked about India Post Payment Bank. That was a different license that the central bank launched in 2018, and now it's a separate entity that can offer banking services to the population. Tunisia Post has their own digital wallet. It's called D17, and they do a ton of different kind of payments and QR code acceptance through that wallet. Indonesia Post is looking at remittances and Sharia-compliant digital savings, thanks to their partnerships with a couple of fintechs, Neuropine and Kinesis. And Turkish Post got an award recently for e-commerce and also helping women run businesses to onboard them onto marketplace and increasing the talent of women. And this is also very important. How can the Post actually help in that education and in that sensitization to the last mile? It's not only just offering the payment, but offering also this human place of interaction that can actually accompany the journey for many low-income populations who don't have confidence or who don't have access and can't or don't want to do that digital journey on their own. I think I'm almost done. Yeah, just a few minutes on what it means for the Moja Loop community. So, of course, we want to provide seamless interoperability. So the Post has offices, they're present everywhere, and it provides a very good use case for testing and for showcasing this interoperability. Financial inclusion, obviously, it makes rural populations, last mile access, villagers can send and receive money, subsidies can be accessed, etc. Low-cost infrastructure, and it could be a vendor-neutral platform, right? And we avoid expensive proprietary systems. And also we help them do real-time processing, which is also very good when we look at urban-rural dynamics, the time it takes to process a payment reconciliation, fraud management, etc. So if we look at Moja Loop in the post office, we're talking about postal DFS. That could be any kind of partnership, with any kind of FSP. We're looking at user onboarding. That becomes also more seamless and easy to do. We're looking at connectivity with different financial institutions and also non-financial institutions in the country. And of course, a big part is payments. The Post can act as a merchant or have other merchants' offerings also at their postal branch, and then make that payment acceptance possible. So I won't go through this again. It's just talking about the different kind of use cases. And this is just a use case for social transfers or G2P. The government agency initiates the payment. The Moja Loop Hub will route that payment, and then the beneficiary receive the funds. And then, very interestingly, and we had some discussions over the last 3 days about this, is we don't want the beneficiary to cash out. And with some education and with more use cases, we can actually incite spending directly from that wallet or keeping that wallet in a savings account that makes sense. And that way we make the money circulate digitally instead of coming out of the system. And the Post can actually help educate and offer these variety of use cases as a government agent, right? So it's also mandated, it's neutral, it's got a very good setting to offer this in a very less competitive way and in a more neutral way. Yeah. I think that's it. I'll stop with some, glimpses from the field of the work that we've done. We do a lot of exposure visits, capacity building, training on the job, focus groups to listen to the end customer. So it's all very rich in how we can make these collaborations and partnerships happen, especially thinking through different lenses and thinking through different people in the room and what will make it a win-win partnership for the client, the end customer, but also for all the other stakeholders involved, from government, passing through the Post and the private sector and the fintech and the Moja Loop community, right? We work across the globe in emerging market contexts, so we're very happy to continue this discussion. Thank you, Julie, for the invitation to this convening. And I'm around if you want to talk today or even after. I think we've had 3 full days of rich exchange, but hoping that this last session has left you with some spark of ideas and very excited to see what we can do together. Thank you very much.